the overall conversation that we're having. When we talk about my contribution to the game, in terms of uh, what I uh, discuss or disseminate in terms of game subject matter, I bring a perspective on seduction. That's just one subject under the curriculum of game. You've also got um, uh, identity, right? You've got game coaches who focus on identity. You've got game coaches who focus on relationships. You got game coaches who, or teachers or mentors who focus on man gets woman. But we're talking about the various levels of the game. Now, I just mentioned the elementary level, which is the general level of the game curriculum.
Yes.
Above that, and more into what you were just describing, is intermediate game. So you've got elementary game at the bottom, at the base. Then you've got intermediate game above that, which goes into relationships, which goes into class structures, which goes into vocation, which goes into how those elements factor into a man's social strategy, which is the definition of game, foundational game. Let me be clear. Uh, how does the average man synthesize these particular components into approaching his desired outcomes? That's the level of intermediate game. So you've got the elementary game, the elementary level, which covers your native skills. Okay, you've got the intermediate level that's above that covers vocation, that covers relationship dynamics, and class navigation. Above that, we have the advanced game level, which covers the philosophy of game. Now, when I say the philosophy of game, I am talking about how a mentor, teacher, or coach presents the sort of universal underpinnings of reality itself. Okay, so when I say philosophy, how does this all tie together? That's why so many people are so quick to say, "Oh, you don't need game for anything." Really, what brand of game are you talking about? You see, this is why it's important to have these conversations, because we have to be discerning in terms of what type of game we're consuming. Like I said, what we preach here or present here is foundational game. In other spaces, they present commercial game. Say these lines, or
Mm.
looks, money, and status. It's very surface. It's very plastic. It's very generic. They can't go deep, like we're able to go deep, because one, what they're trying to do is create this sort of watered down version of romanticism.
Mm.
Okay, and foundational game is not about romanticism, because it reflects the culture that emerged game in the first place. Game did not emerge in the Western European classic tradition. What a lot of commercial game purveyors are presenting, as their version of so-called game, is this pseudo romanticism. Okay, they're talking about the Romeo and the Casanovas, where
Mm.
we're talking about the Mac and Marvin Gaye. Okay,
Mm.
and those are key differences to highlight and to discern when we're talking about brands of game. This is foundational game here. Over there, you've got this commercial sort of pickup artist, manipulation style. Over here, we're talking about a philosophical curriculum that is the social strategy of our specific demographic. Okay, now that's not to say that other demographics can't learn from it. It's just like saying Eastern people who live in the East can't learn something from Western philosophy, or people who live in the West can't learn something from Eastern philosophy.
Mhm.
Of course, they can they can learn something from each other, but they have to first acknowledge that there's a difference in philosophies in and of itself. So
Yeah.
at the base level, we've got elementary game. All right. So that's the development of native skills. On top of that, we've got the intermediate level of game, which discusses relationships, vocation, class, observations, and such. On top of that, we've got advanced game, which is the philosophical curriculum of game, which includes how we, as mentors, teachers, and coaches, present the universal underpinnings of reality itself from the perspective of of the originators of game, which is foundational here to America. Above
Mm.
that, I know, take a gas, take a breather. Above that, we have God level game, and that's where we're going to leave that here because
Yeah.
that is the level that is not necessarily presented for public consumption. That level of the game will definitely be discussed on May 26th in a private webinar. Click the link below to get this high level of information so that you can further integrate that into your journey of masculine mastery.
And just to be clear, the links will actually be to my Raw Brotherhood Patreon. That's not my main one. That's the one I do the webinars on, and also to Cousin T-Tall's Patreon. Both of those links are in the description box. But let's get back to just the levels that you did throw out something, and all of them go deep. Especially when you were talking about that commercial thing, because that's a criticism I have, okay, like people say, oh, it just takes looks, money, and status, but you still got to talk to the woman, I mean, and even with the looks thing, despite what people like to try to say, that's subjective. And even then, you might not get the woman wet. They can look at a guy and say he's handsome and keep walking.
Correct.
And then status, I mean, the woman still might not be impressed with that. You still got to talk to the woman. You still got to navigate. What happens when she got her own money and status too? What happens when she ain't enamored with your looks? Now, does that mean you don't get her? No, it just means that way ain't going to work for her. But then you got some guy go up and just talk with her, get her laughing or something, use a serious mouthpiece, and shoot, he gets all the pie. So it's like, but again,
that's a very good point.
Connection. And I'm gonna tell you what. But then what I'm seeing, what I was saying earlier, what I'm seeing is a lot of guys, they having trouble making that connection. I still get guys saying, well, what do I say to women? Like, just talk. Just talk. But yeah. I'm seeing it, but see, here's the problem I had. This is a problem I had. I'm seeing it from a different perspective. I'm like thinking that's an easy thing because that was something I learned as a child. That was a part of the community. See, that's one thing. When people talk about game, you talk about foundational stuff. We learned that. I mean, when we were little, you had elders saying, okay, yeah, you got to get a good haircut. Yeah, go over there and talk to that girl or something. You already practiced. We already interacting with the girls. And then, you get a little old, you playing spin the bottle. You playing spin the bottle or hide and go get. You already had the interactions. You ain't even hit puberty yet. You've had basic interactions with the girls. But I'm seeing a lot of guys not having that. And they, those are the ones who will get all corny or, they don't know what to say and all of this. They'll be up in age. I'm like, I don't know, just say hi. Seriously, just talk. And it's not any magic words you got to use or anything. But my thing is, it's so a natural thing. I'm thinking you can't do that, but then I'm finding out a lot of guys can't. You got a lot of guys, they interact with a woman, but they're so nervous. They thinking about it. It isn't a natural thing. It isn't a natural thing. Just a regular interaction, or they haven't had that little girl doing the mate selection. I remember with my sons when they were little, they were little. We were living in a house, and all the little girls would come up to the house. In fact, I remember I was out one time with my sons and, with my co-parent. We had a restaurant. My son's just a toddler. This little girl came from another table over there. There's so many stories. They were doing that mate selection thing, but that's a basic thing. But then you got a lot of guys who didn't grow up like that. And they'll say, well, he must have looked cute. He must have did all that. But, girls, if you really leave it to women, they're not just going to look at just one mate. They'll look at what they got in the crowd. Yeah, they'll pick the best ones, but it could be 3 or 4 boys they'll have that crush on or something. Oh, that's another thing about it too, especially when little girls hit puberty. They will definitely have a crush on some little boy. They will have invariably. But you still got to have certain things about you. You still need to fix yourself up, even if you're not an alpha showpiece. And, you typically ain't going to truly be that till you're an adult anyway. But you still had to have some things about you and something about you that just intrigued her. Like I remember elementary school, I wore a Cub Scout uniform to school one time, and I found out 2 or 3 girls had a crush on me wearing it. But it's just like that. You just learn that interaction. But that's the biggest thing. A lot of guys, they don't interact with women, or girls, or they didn't have it. So of course they get into the commercial stuff, like say, do this. And a lot of you got whole communities of guys who are frustrated because it still didn't work for them. But right. It wasn't natural.
And I think it's very important, as you highlighted very well, to understand that there's a difference in philosophies because of the material conditions of the origin point of foundational game versus commercial game. So if commercial game is this sort of neo-romantic, Western perspective on mating, then foundational game emerges from spaces that do not have the same material reality as the sort of romanticized. So you're not bringing cars with poetry and chocolates and flowers, because that's not a material reality in the foundational space. You have to rely on your mouthpiece and the experience that you're able to bring to a woman. That's one of the key differences. And that's why we're very specific when we discern between foundational Black American game and commercial game, because the material conditions in which it emerged itself are completely different. It's not about, you try to bring women from certain demographics, flowers and chocolates and candies, and see how far you get with that. Okay, that in and of itself is seen as alien and foreign. They're looking to see if you have the ability to communicate in an improvisational manner, because we're always having to think on our feet. We're always having to move from one space to another space out of necessity. And so from that emerges a philosophy and a presentation style where you have to be able to freestyle. You got to be able to freestyle rap, or you need to be able to trade bars just like in jazz in an improvisational space in order to really be able to communicate your intent from the perspective of foundational game. That is at the core not only of the philosophy and the understanding, but it's at the core of the material reality of the demographic that it emerged from. Period, point blank, full stop. A lot of that is translatable into other demographics, and it's wide open, especially the information that we present in public spaces. But don't confuse this neo-romanticism with game.
Yeah.
Don't confuse Casanova and Romeo with the MACK and Marvin Gaye. Don't confuse these. Don't even try to conflate. These are two different universes.
Yeah,
don't confuse Exactly. Don't try to conflate or confuse Eastern philosophy with Western, the classical Western philosophical tradition, and then call it all philosophy and try to package it and brand it. Oh, it's New Age. No, let's be clear. You have to go to the source. And if we don't bring across something today in today's discussion, I want to bring across this. When it comes to foundational game, true game, not the commercial game, you, Rom Wills, and myself, okay, Cousin T, we are among the men who are the source material. We are the source material of foundational game. And that's very important to carry across when we are having these discussions and we are pinning down what the tenets and the subject matter and the curricula looks like when we talk about foundational game. That's where a lot of people get stuff twisted. Mm-hmm. When we talk about these traditions, when we talk about these philosophies and these orientations and ways of engaging with reality, we need to clarify the BS. We need to clear all of these misconceptions and these misclassified ideas and terminologies so that we can bring as many of our mentees, our coaching clients, and our students into this, what I call the gospel of game. Okay, you got the gospel of game and you got the logic of lames. Okay, that's going to be a part of the vocabulary going forward. When we talk about the gospel of game, gospel comes from the spirit of the source of the material, and like I said, we are the source material. So we spit the gospel of game. When we talk about the logic of lame, we're talking about people who try to bring this commercialized, artificial, generic, watered down version of what they think the game is. And that's why it doesn't connect. That's why people are like, oh, game, we don't need that. What is it anyway? That's why it's necessary that we have these conversations and that we understand the various levels of the game. Because a lot of people aren't really clear about what the levels of the game are in their totality, and so they don't even know where to start. Do I start with learning pickup lines? Do I start with learning body types? Do I start with learning identity? Do I start with this overall sort of structure of reality? No, let's understand it. There's levels to these things, and when you come to the true source material of foundational game, you'll understand and appreciate elementary is at the bottom. Okay, let's discuss communication. Let's discuss your mating strategy or your mate strategy. Let's discuss what your native skills are. Who are you at your core? Where did you start? What are you adept at? Okay, that's elementary game. Now let's go to intermediate game. What's your background? What's your family structure like? What's your class? What's your vocation? What are you looking for in a relationship? Are you looking for monogamy? Are you looking for ethical non-monogamy? Are you looking for situationships? Are you looking for a roster? Okay, those are different levels. That's the intermediate level of game. Then we go to the advanced level of game, which we find ourselves bringing up just naturally in conversation. How do we qualify what real is? What is the nature of reality? But in order to do that, we have to have a basis for that, right? Yeah. We have to understand who we are, what are the material conditions that formulate our reality. How do all of these levels come together and bring a sort of universal curriculum that allow us to mentor and to teach and to coach men on a path that keeps them solidly square and centered in an orientational position that allows them to master their masculinity. That's really at the core of what we identify as foundational game.
All right.